Welcome back, everyone. This is a study done by the great American illustrator Norman Rockwell, and it's a study for a painting called Home Ties. This is what the painting looks like. It's a kid, obviously, going off to college. His dad looks maybe a little sad or unhappy. The kid is excitedly looking toward the future. Notice the little detail of the flag on the suitcase. Just says State University, State U. And the dog also knows that he's leaving and seems pretty sad, as a dog would be. You'll notice that in the study that we're going to draw, the mom was also in the picture. And Norman Rockwell took that out. Yeah, is it on a truck? No, looks like a bench. Yeah, so definitely improved for the final version, but this is how we get to great ideas in art, is by experimenting. And he obviously probably had some models or photographs for this drawing, although the drawing of the kid's face looks very maybe invented. It doesn't look like it's from observation. So we're going to try to draw this whole thing today. There's a lot to it, but we're going to just see how it feels to create a quick study for a narrative drawing. So we're going to start with the older man's head, and I'm going to just do a very simplified schematic to kind of show which way it's turned, how the eyes are sloping, where the ear is. The ear is going to give a lot of visual cues as to the direction he's looking, which is sort of downward towards the dog. I'm going to use some fractional thinking to estimate where the shoulders pass behind the head. So see how they go through just a little bit right under the ear and sort of like this. And I'm going to use fractional thinking to determine the width of the shoulder here. That's like about as wide as the entire head, a little wider. So however wide this was, we're going to go over a little more than that this way. That's going to give us where that shoulder is located. One thing we haven't talked about a lot this year is the way artists often repeat angles. And if you learn to look for these repeating angles, it's going to improve your drawing process. So we can see like there's a slight forward angle to the upper arm that's answered on the other side by a similar angle over here. And then the contrary direction is going to be like through the sternum, and the rib cage is tilting this way. That's answered. This little bit of the shirt is going the same direction. That's a little different right there. Let's go ahead and try to draw the sternum and this little plane change here and this little bit coming out here. It might be helpful to actually think about his rib cage, and how it's tilted forward. And we're going to do a little measuring to just find out where we might put his seat. So there's a head, two heads, and three heads gets us all the way down to his knee, basically. You see that? 1, 2, 3. So we've got a head, two heads, third head takes us below his seat all the way to his knee. Another trick for getting things oriented right is the use of plumb lines. If we pull a plumb line straight down from the back of the ear, you see how we land right at the kneecap. So if we pull a plumb from here and go over from here, we just found the kneecap. And now it's going to be relatively easy to draw this connecting angle in. And notice, remember this angle we talked about before, it's repeated here. And it's showing up as sort of an extension of that. So we've got this and this. Same angle. And I think a lot of artists do this without really knowing they're doing it. It's visually pleasing to repeat angles because it creates strong rhythm in the drawing. Okay, if we continue counting heads down, we've got one more head takes us to about here on the cuff, and then about another 3/4 of a head to the toe. So we go one more head to the cuff, with this being our head size, 3/4 of a head to the end of the toe. So that's the leading leg. We've got a strong set of parallel lines here. We've got the arm and this back leg are all going the same direction. You see that? So we go from just above the seat to just above here and above the knee at this angle. And we've got this series of parallels. If we extend this line down, it intersects with the outside of this knee. So we already found that angle. Puts the outside of that knee over there. It should be peaking maybe a little higher. It has to peak higher than this knee. And now this angle is showing up again. We're going to be going back this way. That angle is a repetition of this one, the one at the outside of the pectoralis muscle up here. So to get this right, you might want to lean on analyzing this negative space. See that negative space between the legs? You draw that shape correctly, it's going to set you up for getting the angle of the leg correct. And finally, this foot. We're just going to block that in. Notice the toe does not stick out as far as the knee. If we pull a plumb line up from the toe, it ends up even with this elbow. A lot of artists in the olden days, and some still today, will actually draw with a plumb line, like a heavyweight on a string, in order to get these vertical relationships correct. So if we pull straight up from there, that's going to show us where this elbow is. And there's that folded arm. And that's the basic structure of the first figure. Because this is a great design, we're going to see a lot of repetition of some of these angles. You'll see that this angle is going to be repeated in the back of the dog. And again, these things are not accidental. They are definitely, they might be unconscious, but they are purposeful at the same time. They mean something. So we see like the beautiful contrast here between the father, who's all kind of hunched, and the son, who is very vertical. Everyone see that? Look at his neck is like straight up. His rib cage and sternum are straight up. And that's what this drawing is really about. It's about this contrast in this formal contrast between these two figures. And then in a way the older man's mood is reflected back in the mood of the dog, and so are some of these angles. You see that? It's like this connects the dog to the older man, and these verticals make the younger man very like a distinct figure in this little drama. It's obviously not just about formal relationships. It's about an actual story, but the formal devices very strongly reinforce the mood that the artist that Norman Rockwell was trying to convey. So I threw in this vertical to represent sort of the line of his sternum and thigh, this main vertical. There's another vertical here representing the outside of his arm. And his shoulder, where shoulder turns around the level of the man's eyebrows. So we can carry that across, and we end up like that. And we could look at a negative space again to get this, see between these two heads, there's this negative space, so we can sort of analyze that shape to help us. And we want the young man's head to be a little smaller, I think, than the older man's head. And obviously strongly turned to the left, eagerly looking forward to leaving home. So we're not going to draw any, well, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to do that plane change to indicate the way his head is turned. And his sleeve is sort of emerging from behind his dad's sleeve. And his leg is parallel to his dad's leg. So it follows the dad's direction here, and then it turns vertical right here. There's the front of his suit. And he's got one hand like this, and the other hand, very polite pose. And there's the cuff and the shoe, which is, notice his shoe comes down as far into our field of vision as his father's shoe. So it's just sort of stacked there to the right of the father's shoe. And this shoe comes out past his cuff, and like that. I might have both these shoes just a little high in a little bit high in the picture because his lower leg is looking a little short to me. So I'm gonna just bump these shoes down a hair and bring this knee up a hair. As always, just do your best to keep up. Don't make a lot of erasing and corrections. You're going to be assessed for completion more than accuracy. Okay, the last figure here, mom. Kind of read the rhythm here. Like, here's the line of dad's shoulders. Here's the son's shoulders. And here's mom's shoulders. You see how mom and dad are kind of like bookends? And he's like a book, which could be more symbolism. He's going away to school. Doesn't really appear that his parents were college-educated people. I'm guessing for this time in American history, they probably were farmers, and it was the first time that someone in the family's going off to college. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from it. So here's mom's head. Make sure you cut that chin down past the line of her shoulders. There's the line of her eyes. And then we just jump down. We look, there's her collar and her sternum would be more vertical. We're sort of drawing the outline of the buttons on her dress. A lot of my students are really usually eager to get to like the real drawing, and they don't want to do studies like this, but it's kind of interesting to notice just how much Rockwell learned from this study, and he made this really radical decision to get rid of mom and and move the whole scene to the running board of the truck, and really ended up with a much, much better design, I think. Nothing against moms, but it's a stronger contrast with just the dog and the guy. Okay. So I'm going to determine how far down the hem of her dress goes by, again, looking all the way over here, and see it comes down about as far as Dad's hand. So that's going to, really important habit, don't just look to adjacent areas of the drawing. You want to look for relationships that are more remote from each other, and it will quickly improve your drawing if you get in that habit. And finally, remember this direction, that's the direction of the dog's back. So let's place the dog's head first. See how the dog's muzzle would sort of lines up with this crook between Dad's rib cage and thigh. So that's about the height of the muzzle. It extends just a little bit over the knee, over Dad's knee. And there's the direction of the dog's back. And it's really interesting the way Rockwell emphasized like this direction, which mirrors dad, and then also threw in this strong vertical, which mirrors the son's pose. And since dogs aren't really known for sitting still for very long, it's likely that he sort of invented that device, invented the dog's pose, or at least watched the dog long enough to see that happen. Dogs give you a lot of variety in their poses if you watch them for a while. So there's the little suitcase with the little bundle of books on top, whatever that is. And all we have left for our planning here is the sort of think about the rib cage of the dog and his haunches, which, let's see, if we go from the tip of dad's toe across, that's about how far down the dog's butt comes, and then the haunches come up between the butt and the suitcase, and then the tail curls around. Notice how the tail keeps our eye flowing back around into the design. Again, not accidental. Dog could just as easily, the tail could have been doing something like that, and you'll see it'd be a much worse design. And was that just the way the dog happened to sit? No, these are compositional choices that the artist made. And the easiest thing to do as an artist and the worst thing is just be lazy and say, take a picture and, well, that's how the dog was sitting, so that's good enough for my drawing, and I'm going to draw it and make it look just like the photograph, and won't that be great? But you're missing opportunities to actually design the image. And all living creatures give us tons of choices because we're always moving, and there's so many possible poses that you're going to see that you could choose from. Okay, now we're going to get into some details. So let me clean up all this annotation, and we're going to take a look at Dad's actual head. Drawing like this is really good to copy because we're going to learn how Rockwell simplified forms. It's sort of like knowing shorthand. None of you probably know what shorthand is, but in the olden days, in courtrooms and some business offices, there were people called stenographers, and they would have to type or write down what people were saying as they said it. Is that still a thing?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. They don't use shorthand. What do they do now?
They have either a technology. I think they have a box that like covers their mouth and they talk into it.
Oh, yeah.
Like special typewriter. Yeah, they do type it out.
Okay, well, there used to be a thing called shorthand where they would actually just write it out with, and they had all kinds of symbols to represent common English words.
Yeah, now they have a keyboard with that on it.
Okay. So what Rockwell is showing us here is a sort of shorthand for figures and faces. So, and the only way to learn that is by copying other people and studying them. You're probably not going to figure out. I'm sure that's how he learned it, and you're not going to figure it out on your own. So we're just going to try to draw what we see here. Notice Rockwell's shorthand He has a wonderful eye for structure, but what this is really about is emotion. Like Rockwell is showing in just a few lines, almost using like a cartoonish technique, he's showing that this father is kind of devastated by his son's departure. Can you feel that? Like, it's like pretty striking. And then look at how most of us lavish all kinds of detail on the features, and then we're like, no, I have to do the hair. Like, the hair is like an afterthought. It's kind of cool the way in this drawing Rockwell like really makes the hair look super realistic with this cartoonish head. You know, like you can really feel the highlight on this part of the hair. Very effective. Okay, I made his forehead kind of bulge out a little there, sorry. There we go. Here's a kind of shorthand for the collar. Very simple. And you can see how he's not really worried about his pencil isn't that sharp. He's probably using a pretty soft, blunt pencil for this kind of quick study. But he is throwing in shadows as he goes. I don't remember what that detail is. It's like a button on his... Let's take a look at the painting one more time and see. It's like a tag. Yeah, he's got a luggage tag or something. I don't know what that is. Okay. But it's something, it's coming out of his pocket on a little string. So we'll throw that in. If you want to get some of this line quality, you could try, see what I'm doing? I'm turning my pencil down close to the paper. So I'm using the side of the pencil a little bit. And this is important. You see how there's a break in this line? Where there's the bottom of his sleeve, but it stops right here, and the knee kind of overlaps it a little, just to show that knee's coming out in front of the sleeve. There's the bottom of the sleeve, and he hasn't really resolved quite what's going on with these hands. Those are his eyeglasses? I think you're right. There's this other very foreshortened sleeve. And try to get a little bit of the line quality you see here. Very beautifully represented these folds, the way they overlap, slight exaggeration of the overlaps. I was speaking to one of you, I think earlier this week, about taking an interesting series of overlapping folds like this and sort of, we have a tendency to just kind of straighten it out, and it's a better bet to sort of exaggerate them a little bit. And for those of you who still tend to like jump right into contours, that's what we're doing now. We're doing the outlines of these forms. Like, I want you to really feel how much easier it is and more fun to lay these contours in when we've really analyzed and figured out the geometry of the drawing first. Like, we're doing this with confidence that things are going into the right places. I used to be really confident in my shading ability and a lot less confident in my ability to draw contours. And as you've probably heard me say a million times, I developed my skill in contours by forcing myself to draw only with a pen for probably about 3 years and probably 10 or 12 hours a day of pen sketching. I was kind of obsessive. And now I think my contours are the strongest part of my drawing instead of the weakest. And it still kind of thrills me that I can do it at this level, since it felt so out of reach for such a long time. That was in my early 20s. Little discrepancy here in this suitcase placement. I think I need to bring that edge over a little bit. There will probably be others. It's interesting that Rockwell is not converging his orthogonals. You see that? He's choosing to make them exactly parallel, and he knew enough to where I think that's an aesthetic choice. So what does that mean? To me, it says he wants us to feel like we're looking at this scene from a distance. The further away you are from a scene like this, the less the orthogonals are going to converge. And so he wants us to feel like we're looking in from a distance, sort of to give us a little psychological distance from the scene, but that's just a theory. Did who die? Norman Rockwell? He died, I think, in the 70s. Late 70s, early 80s, something like that. He was active from he was a well-known illustrator from around the 1930s, so. And he was at the peak of his fame in the 40s and 50s. Okay, so this dog head needs a little work. trying to figure out where. So this is like the eye socket of the dog. There's that dark little nose, looks better already. There's the muzzle for him. And there's the brow on the other side. And there's the floppy ear. Much better. And again, it's really quite wonderful the way this dog's tail kind of brings your eye back towards the main figure of the father. Okay, mom's gonna be real easy. There's really not much to her. She's sort of got her hands on her little purse. And we're really almost done here. It's interesting to think how long this drawing might have taken him. I'm guessing it probably took him about as long as we're spending, like maybe an hour. Oh yeah. And I'm also guessing that he would have spent probably longer on the if he used photographs for this, he would have spent more time setting up his photographs than doing this drawing. And that's something a lesson I want you to internalize, because creating the setup and the idea for a design like this is really a greater achievement than the sketch. And there are a lot of people who can paint as realistically as Rockwell, but not too many who ever could come up with designs with this as beautiful and as meaningful and expressive as this, I would say. In a lot of ways, he's probably the most important American painter who ever lived, in terms of his influence and the way he changed the way we think about ourselves as a people. But when I took art history at Wesleyan in the 1980s, they in American art history, he was not mentioned. He wasn't a figure that anyone took seriously in those days because all the important American art of the 20th century was supposed to have been abstract, and he kind of definitely doesn't fit that mold. So, but it's fascinating to think that just as his popularity was kind of peaking, the artist Jackson Pollock was making like the cover of Time magazine, and for his drip paintings. The shorthand he's using for this guy is like almost like a anime style. And look at that ear. He's like really. Okay, I'm going to back out now, and the last details I'm going to add are some of the structural details of the seat that they're on. So Dad's on a bench. And they're definitely not on the truck. There's a suggestion in the back of clapboard. And these lines are converging just a little. You see how they get very horizontal when they get up near the top of his head. There's one kind of awkward tangent here between the back of the dog and Mom's shoe. Maybe that's why he took Mom out. That would have bothered me. And maybe a downspout over here, who knows? So if you want to do a great AP portfolio, you want to do a great narrative, what you want to do is do a few drawings with this level of detail before you take your final photographs. Like, you can use drawings like this for AP to show what colleges and the College Board all want to see is like, are you a visual problem solver? Can you they want to see your work. They want to see how you solve visual problems, and you show that through showing studies and thumbnails like this. And if you can show a few, so you can show that you actually like changed your mind, revised your idea a few times, that's really powerful evidence that you're the kind of person that they want to accept and give money to. So in a lot of ways, this type of work is a lot more significant to them than like your really polished and finished pieces, especially if your polished work is just all done from photographs. And I guess that's gonna do it for the video today. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers out there, so tell your friends, help push us over the edge. Not that it really matters at all, but everyone sub. Okay. Yeah, that's it for today. Thank you.